Are you trapped in a 9-to-5 job, underpaid, and dreaming of a better life? This episode will inspire you to make that dream a reality. Our guest, Ryan Dossey, who was a former employee making $23,000 annually, actually threw caution to the wind and took the bold leap into starting his own business. He actually made $12,000 on his very first deal, wholesaling real estate. For those unfamiliar, is a strategy of finding a distressed, rundown property, getting it under contract without using any of your own money, and then selling it to an investor who does have money that pays you for finding the deal. And he went on to close 74 deals in a year, skyrocketing his earnings and proving that traditional employment is meager in comparison with what you can create wealth-wise starting your own business. So escape the confines of your 9-to-5 and unleash your income potential with the power of real estate wholesaling in this episode. And if you've gotten any value from this podcast at all, it means a lot if you take a moment now and leave us a review. It gives us more ability to produce more content to get you over the edge to financial freedom.
The DealMachine REI Podcast. Everything you need to know to get started in real estate investing.
All right, so Ryan, you and I have known each other for at least 5 years, if not more. Definitely, I think more, because we were both in Indianapolis where we got started in real estate investing. And I know that real estate's definitely changed your life because you said you used to be a police officer. You wanted to become a police officer. And then you realized that probably wasn't going to give you the life that you wanted. So I was wondering if you could talk about that change to doing your first wholesale deal, to then building a rental portfolio of 100 plus properties, to then starting companies that help real estate investors with their own marketing, like Ballpoint Marketing and Call Porter, two businesses that I personally use as well.
Yeah, man. So probably like step back. I had my first full-time job at 17. So I was like homeschooled, but kind of not. Like I played a lot of Halo, right?
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah. So first full-time job at 17, and I was selling car warranties. I was really good at it. So my first year, I probably made around 6 figures at 17. And then it got harder and harder and harder and harder to make money. So fast forward to...
Wait, why?
Yeah, why?
The owners realized they were paying more than they needed to.
Okay.
Regulation in the industry. My like performance and like volume didn't change, but my compensation back did. And I won't sit here and pretend I was like the best closer by any means, but I was decent at it. And when I was 2021, as my last year as a W-2 employee, I made 23 grand pre-tax. So I got married at 20, started dating my wife at 15, 16. So we kind of had this weird change where like when we started dating, it was like, what do you want? Where do you want to go? Like on me, right? And then fast forward to like our first year being married, and it was like, what's a budget? Like how does this work, right? So it was about that time that a coworker actually was like always talking about wholesaling and Rich Dad Poor Dad. So he got me and a guy that sat next to me interested in it. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad like everybody else. I actually found bigger pockets looking for more, right? Rich Dad Poor Dad made me really excited, but didn't like give me anything to do with that energy. Just like, there's a better way to do it. Pay us 50 grand and we'll tell you. Right. So found bigger pockets. And the three of us actually decided to split a direct mail campaign. It was yellow letters that we were doing. And I lined everything up, told the guy we'd pay for it. He invoiced us. And the guy that actually got everybody interested said, hey, I actually think Ryan's too young, because I was 20. And he said, I don't want to do this if Ryan's involved in it. So I went to the other guy. It was supposed to be the three of us doing this. And I was like, hey, man, like I committed to this. I don't really have the money for it. So like, if you want to do it with me, let's just split the cost. Otherwise, I'm just going to throw the whole thing on a credit card and not tell my wife about it and hope it goes well. And so he was like, yeah, man, you know what? F the other guy. You and I'll do this. So that first drop was right at like $3,000. and we got our first deal within probably like 4 weeks. I did everything wrong. Like threw it on Zillow as a for sale by owner. Once I got it under contract, the people that came to buy it, it was their first flip. So they were like, we have the money like in the truck. And I was like, that feels wrong. Like, let's find a title company. Like it was kind of the blind leading the blind. But on that deal, we ended up netting right at like $12,500. Wow. So after reimbursing our expenses, we had like a $10,000 profit. So awesome. I was sitting there looking at, a check for effectively 6 months of my life that only really took us a couple hours of like actual work. Man. And that was kind of when I was in that, like, law enforcement was interesting to me. A lot of my friends did it. I like to drive fast. And I was like, I can drive fast without having to go to jail. Like, sweet.
In the squad car.
Yeah, exactly. So there was kind of that appeal to it. But then I started to do this. And after I got that first check, I remember being like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. And that was probably back in 2014 was my first deal.
Okay, I have 2 questions.
Ryan definitely knows what it's like to have his comp plan manipulated, right?
Dude,
that sounds like a very similar story.
Why?
You guys are making a lot of money and then they cut your commissions and you're like, screw you, I'm going to do real estate.
Why is it that, and this is not one of my 2 questions. So this is a third question. Why is it that managers or business owners always seem to cut the salespeople, the people that are making them the money? Why do they come after them?
So, I mean, off topic, but I'm cool hitting this. I just had sales guys that I let go. What we found was like the comp plan that we'd set up, we worked with some consultants on, actually didn't make sense for the business. So it was like they could pull in $1 million. There wasn't profit on the back end of that. Mm-hmm. So for us, it was okay, we were actually set up to fail from day one. So we had to adjust that, and then not knocking those guys, but they've not been in the, and this is at Ballpoint, they haven't been in the business for a couple months and we've grown without them. So,
right.
So
sometimes the guys not having the right structure from the get-go could cause that. Like,
yeah. And I mean,
we want to pay you, but maybe paid you too much.
CCF, our coaching company, right? I had a friend that worked for me in that for years. And, the comp plan, I mean, was like outrageously lucrative. Like people talk about, I want to make 6 figures a year. Homie made multi 6 figures working for me a year from home, set his own hours, own schedule, all of that. But the problem with his comp plan was it worked when he was closing at a certain level. Mm-hmm. As his sales started to decline, closing percentage declined. It got to the point that it was like, hey, bro, like you're making more on my company than I am, or there's months that I'm actually not making any money and I'm paying you a ton. So like, this doesn't work. So in my instance, like the times that I've had to do that, it's been like there was a misunderstanding on our end, totally our fault, of like just what was even offered. Like, oh yeah, we think this makes sense. And then we start to actually look at the P&L and we're like, this doesn't, math ain't mathin'.
Right.
Or it might work at a certain level. And then if you dip below that or exceed that, I don't think that was the case with the places I worked.
Right. Yeah,
I think it was, they just realized we can throttle this back cheaper. And they're not going to go anywhere.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So question 2, once you got this deal closed, did you then tell your wife that you'd put money on this credit card?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I've been.
How did she respond to this? Oh, hey, I did this, but I made this. Dive into that.
So back then I lied about a lot of stuff. Like that was my, I was like a classic nice guy, right? Meaning I would lie to you if I thought it was better for you or made you think better of me. Okay. And what I've since learned is that's not kind and it's not nice and we should just be honest with each other. So, back then I think it was more of just like I probably told her pretty quick, like, hey, this is what I did. But it was like, I wasn't often asking for permission. It was more of like an after the fact looping in. Mm-hmm. with her, she's always just kind of trusted me to handle the money. And I have, right? Like, don't get me wrong. There's been times that it's up or down, or it's more challenging, right? Especially like the bootstrapped years early on. But I think one thing that's actually been great for us is that she's not involved in the business. Like, I used to envy friends that had that of like, oh, it's like you and your spouse just like figuring this out together. Bro, I'm so glad I can go home and I don't got to talk about houses, you know? So yeah, she handled it well. I remember I said, hey babe, look, this worked. And her reply was, well, I knew you'd make it work. I think it was more surprising to you than it was to me. And I was like, wow, you really
There
do
you go.
trust me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is cool.
So what did you do from there after you got your first deal?
Yeah. So him and I worked together for a couple years after that. We wholesaled several, built up enough cash to go like 25% down on a couple rental properties. So we had a couple rentals out in like St. Anne, Hazelwood, and St. Louis. He still owns them actually. And then I had to move from St. Louis to Indianapolis for my wife's grad school, which is where I met David. And I got to the point that it was like I had $3,000 to my name and $3,000 a month in bills, and I was like, I'm gonna go full time. And with him and I, it was really like I needed cash. Me owning a couple rentals wasn't benefiting me at all back then. Arguably, this has benefited him more long term that, you know, he still owns the rentals. But I was like, hey, dude, like, can you buy me out to like give me some more runway? Great dude. We still keep in touch. You know, the one lesson I got from that was like making sure goals are aligned with partners. Great dude. Love him still. Don't have a bad thing to say about him. But he was further along in life, like had money, house was paid for. And I'm like, bro, I'm trying to do 100 deals to like get rich. And he's like, I'm good just doing like a couple a quarter. So we ended up in this like kind of wanted different things. We were now living in different places. Like it didn't make sense for him to do a deal in St. Louis and then pay me for it when I wasn't involved at all, vice versa. So that would have been, I did that for 2 years. So 2016 was when I kind of burned the ships, so to speak, and went full time.
Gotcha. Fun.
So was it difficult? I know a lot of people start doing like these JV partnerships and unofficial partnerships. It sounds like what you did was actually more official, right? So was that like something that you would recommend for somebody, or what advice do you have, right? Because I find a lot of people, they like the idea of having a partner when they're starting out wholesaling.
Yeah. You know, man, I don't think I could have done it without him. I don't think I'd be here. It was like a legit LLC. We both owned half of, you know, on my end, I do think it hurt him when I was like, hey, like I want to part ways. So I say, I don't have anything bad to say about him. He might disagree, you know? But it was just like hey, we want different things. Right. So man, I've had great partnerships and I've had bad ones. My overall, I think, would be like, you have to bring different skill sets to the table and goals have to be aligned.
Yeah.
I get super nervous when I see newbies want to like squat up with each other.
With another
you end
newbie.
up with,
right.
You end up with like two people that don't know how to swim, trying not to drown, holding on to each other. And like, I haven't seen that work well. Inside of CCF, I have seen members partner up and that's gone well, but it's been a lot of like, they're totally different skill sets, right? Like one of them is the marketer, the closer. The other guy just wants to do the back end accounting, the finances, the flow charts, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and CCF, just to explain that, it stands for.
So it's create cash flow. So it's my mastermind group. I'm not like super flashy about it. I probably should be more outspoken with it. But so far, so I've done this since 2019, end of 2019. So going on like 3 years. We've generated 67 million in results for our clients.
Wow.
So that's wholesale fees, profit on flips, and equity in new holds. So I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, I can actually speak on this partnering with people a little bit too, because when we first started, there was another person in our area that was wholesaling, and we tried to do the partnership thing because I was like, hey, help me out on this process too. And what quickly revealed itself was that we were splitting a assignment fee, but the responsibilities of the deal was not split even. And I felt like, man, I have been on like trying to find a buyer for this. I've been up late at night working on this deal. I wake up, I call him, doesn't answer the phone. It's like, man, like, but we had the exact same, like, I'm going to split off from this and go and do this on my own. I know that was more of a shock to him, but it was like, there's not value here. Like, the value is changing your life trajectory. And if that doesn't feel like those two things blend, and it really is, like David, you pointed out, two newbies joining and squatting up is not going to lead you down a path you want to go. You really, if you're going to squat up, go and find the wholesaler that's already doing it. That's where your beneficial relationship's going to come from. It's not going to come from two people doing it, Ryan, just like you said, clinging on to each other for dear life.
Yeah, I think it's it really does have to be like a 1 + 1 = 3. And I think often with newbies, it's 1 + 1 = 0, right?
Yeah, that's
so
true.
It's almost like you have to do 2 or 3 times you have to at least do double to make the same amount of money. So you really need to do 3x to make it worthwhile. And one piece of advice I actually got from Brent Daniels was have something that's just 100% yours. So I think that's like, I didn't do it that way. So I can't knock the people that go in and partner with people. And I mean, shoot, I even partnered up with another newbie, right? He just had more money and a different skill set than what I had. But like you really want to make sure that if you make $1, you can keep $1 somewhere.
Yep.
And similar to like what you're pointing out, it gets frustrating when you do the work of $1 and you get 50 cents of it. And it's like, bro, like pull your weight.
Yeah. And you don't want to have that conversation because it's like maybe this person's also trying to get started, and it's like maybe their value system doesn't align with yours, but you never sat and had the conversation of how do you want this to look? It was just like, hey, let's partner up on this, and you do this and I'll do this. And then you quickly start realizing, oh my gosh, I'm spending so much time on this and I'm giving half of it away. And it's not, you will feel this wasn't fair to me. That's going to be a natural response. I used to
tiptoe. Now I just rip Band-Aids off.
Yep.
One of my employees was like, I feel like you're starting to like find your power, and I don't know that I like it, because I've been a lot more blunt, right?
Sure.
But it's like being blunt might not be nice, but it is kind. Like if you don't know there's an expectation that's not getting met here, I'm going to build up resentment, and that's going to blow out sideways.
Yep.
So instead, I'm just going to be like, hey man, these were the deals in the partnership. You're not doing X, Y, and Z. If something doesn't change, I'm exiting.
Yep. The faster you can get to that realization of it's better to just say it and not beat around the bush, the better your business is going to operate. And really the better person you're going to become, because you can just say the things that need to be said instead of trying to tiptoe around it. Tiptoeing around it only delays the end result. The end result's going to be the same no matter what. But the faster you can just say, hey, this doesn't work, or this is what I'm seeing, you'll get through it quick, and it's going to lead to just moving on.
So how many deals had you done with that person before you decided to split up?
Man, that's a good question. I don't really know. I would say probably a dozen plus. I mean, we had a brand we owned together. You know, I'd built out a lot of like the website and CRM stuff. I don't remember the exact count, but it wasn't an insignificant amount of deals or money that we'd made each other.
Okay. So then after that, what did you do you did stuff on your own, right? You did wholesaling on your own?
Yeah. So 2016 sucked. I did 6 deals. My like average profit per deal was like $3,000.
Okay.
Cost me about $3,000 to make a deal. End of 2016, I think I was 36 grand in credit card debt not having a great time. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I had two like real pivotal things that happened. Buddy of mine, Frank McGovern, was always posting these big check pics, right? 30, 50, 100K. And I'm like over here looking at my 3K and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? So I called my buddy Frank and I was like, hey man, like I'm just going to be vulnerable. And I've found that served me well, like asking for help when I need it. And I was like, how are you doing these big deals? And I was expecting some like niche list, some property, some pivot I would make. And he was just like, Ryan, you're a bitch. And I was like, I'm sorry. And he was like, the reason you're only making $3,000 a deal, you think that's all your time's worth.
Right.
You start to value it at 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, $100,000. That's how you get deals. So I get off the phone and I'm like, man, Frank's a dick. Like that was not helpful. Right. But my next deal, I was like, okay, I'm gonna see if I can get $8,000. And I did. And then I was like, can I get 10? And then I did.
Yeah.
And, so it was kind of that, it was a total mindset thing. Like it really wasn't that much harder to build in our average right now is 15K, not harder to build in a 15K than it is 3. It's your starting point and the work you put in. Right. So that happened, in 2016. And that was the first time that I admitted I needed help. That was when I hired my first business coach. So I was at a friend's wedding in Hawaii that I could not afford to be at. I'm going out to like lunch with my wife and she's ordering like a Coke. And I'm like, shit, that's $2. Like that level of broke. Right.
Oh man. That's tough.
It sucked, dude. All just going on a credit card. Like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for, I'm never going to financially recover from this. Right. So I'm out in the water and I was looking back at Waikiki and I was born in Hawaii for those that don't know. And I've always wanted to own property there. And I had the thought of, I'd love to own a condo here. And something in my brain was like, that's never going to happen for you. And I was like, that's kind of fucked up. So I like waded back into my wife and I was like, hey, I need help. And I think that was the first time I'd cried in years. And I was like, business wise, I've got concerns, like faith wise, theological, like I know who I'm going to hire. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it, but I can't keep doing this. Right.
Yeah.
So I went and hired a guy named Chuck Balsamo, was somebody that had actually preached at a church I grew up in, but had done like business coaching. And 2016, I did 6 deals. 2017, I did 74.
Wow.
So
nice.
Dramatic change.
Holy
That's
cow.
awesome.
So when you stopped being a bitch and you just made $15,000 per deal, like, well, how did you actually do that though? Did you just buy it at a deeper discount or did you sell it at a higher price?
So yeah, great question. And this goes back to the partnership conversation. I won't name names, but I had a guy that was like my go-to buyer that ended up being a real piece of work. So there were situations like I'd send him a deal. He'd tell me he was going to buy it. Then he'd never send in the money. I'd fall out of contract. Then he'd buy it direct from the person. Like that kind of stuff started to come to light. So what I realized was I kept hoping or waiting for other people to make me successful. Like bring me in on something, like take me along for the ride. And I got to the point that I was like, no, I'm going to drive this ship. Like I'm tired of being let down. I'm tired of being taken advantage of. There was a well-known guy I won't name that I sourced a subdivision for, never paid me for it. That was the deal. I'd get brought in on the upside, built luxury homes. I never saw $1. Right. So I had enough of these like getting kicked in the teeth that I was like, okay, you know what? I'm tired of waiting on other people. So I started networking. I started building a better buyers list. In Indianapolis, I started doing deals with a guy named Brett Snodgrass. Incredible guy. Still look up to him today. And he actually helped me start to like wholesale and flip and some of that stuff. So found better buyers, stuck to my numbers. The other thing that was weird for me as a kid from the Midwest with people pleasing tendencies was I used to be like, hey, I can pay 100K. They'd be like, no. I'd be like, okay. Like, you know, just tuck tail and leave. Right. What I started to do was follow up on those no's or not give my max right out the gate. So I might be able to pay 100, but I'm going to start at 82. and you tell me no, and I'm not going to be like, okay, what about 100? I'm going to, okay, well, did you have a counter in mind? How'd you get to that number? Have you ran comps? Have you looked at how much work this place actually needs and what that kind of stuff costs? And being a lot more comfortable in my kind of in the business, right? I forget who told me it, but it was approach the conversation like you have $100 million in cash. If I'm in negotiation with you over something and I have more money than I know what to do with, I'm not going to sound desperate. I'm not going to be needy. If this doesn't pan out, that's fine. I'm leaving and my life's great. Right.
Right.
So it was kind of that vibe that I took to those of, I feel like before it was almost this like, please, sir, sell me your house so I can pay my mortgage. And it ended up being much more, this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
Please open up your podcast app right now and leave us a review and let us know what you thought of this episode. It means so much because the reviews help us get in front of more people. And the more people we can get in front of, the more we can help them achieve financial freedom. And we also get more energy to put more content out like this to help you. So by leaving us a review, it will give you more content to come to help you along on your journey. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
So-
you find quickly when you come, I mean, the honest approach to this would be you're going to get them this deal. Look, I'm going to be able to give you this much for this house. And then it just needs to stay there. Sometimes I'll even approach them when we're giving an offer. I'll just say, would you be against $50,000? And make them, it's the whole yes or no question. Make them give you a yes or no. Like, instead of just presenting and saying, hey, I can offer this. No. Are you against this? They have to think twice before they say, are you against $50,000? They're already wanting to say no to you. That's the way negotiation works. You're going to give them a price. Their first thought is, I want to say no to this because I don't want to take the first thing that comes out of this guy's mouth. They think you have more. So if you put a question in front of them where they actually have to say yes, they have to think about that. So you're going to say, hey, are you against $50,000? Yeah.
It reminds me of anchoring, right? Because
it is
the way you're asking the question, you're not actually offering them $50,000,
right?
But you're kind of like anchoring them to that low price, right? And asking like what their response would be if they received something for that price.
Yep.
My buddy
they can't
Greg,
say
Greg
no
Helbeck,
right away.
My buddy Greg
Ryan?
Helbeck has a question that I love. So he'll ask sellers, before we talk about price, is there anything else you have to get figured out before you can accept an offer?
That's a good question.
And that was solid because I was running into that all the time. Like price would work, but then there's this litany of other, well, where am I going to move? Who's going to take my stuff? I need to get into assisted living. My kid's still in school for another couple months. So like finding, even if you don't use that exact phrasing, but outside of getting the house sold, like what other decisions? Are you the decision maker? Am I even talking to the right person? Like having some of those conversations before the offer helps. I'm a huge fan of getting them to give me a number first. Like if I've got a choice, I want them to throw out the starting point.
Yep.
Because that's my favorites when they're super high. Because I'm like, how'd you get there? Right?
Yeah.
Is there more than one home on the parcel? You got an oil field out back? Like, what am I missing? Right?
Yeah.
So
I'm taking that away. That's a takeaway for me. I appreciate that. Before you accept an offer, is there anything you need to figure out first? Because that would change. I mean, we've had some deals just this month. We've had 2 deals where it's like, okay, we're going to put pause on this until you have, like, one of them was they needed to find out the lot lines because they had sold a part of the property to the neighbor. I'm like, well, what is the lot lines? I don't know. We need to have it surveyed. I'm like, well, let's do that first before we close because need to know what we're buying here. And then even one of them had a tenant that has not paid rent in a year. And I'm like, well, let's get that part figured out first. Like that would have saved me even putting it under contract. Hey, before we even proceed, let's talk about this situation.
Well, it makes it so you're not trying to overcome the wrong objection, right? Like as investors, I feel like we get hung up on price.
Yep.
Price. But for them, there's so much more that goes into this. Like, yeah, there's probably a monetary value they're hoping they'll walk with to fix X, Y, and Z, right? Move, relocate, retire, whatever. But I think as investors, we make the mistake of thinking that's all that matters here.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found, I mean, guys, I stopped counting how many deals I've done, but we're well into like the hundreds.
Yeah.
A lot of the times it's really not the money. It's like well, do I have to do X, Y, and Z, or is this going to get paid off? Or how do I move my stuff? Or, well, interest rates right now are so high, I don't know that I can afford a different place. Or, I mean, we had a deal we bought where the woman's main concern was getting into this particular retirement community. So we bought her house, we moved her into one of our vacants. And then in the meantime, we actually worked on getting her a slot in this community. She ended up being horrible and I ended up evicting her. But it was like, got the deal done. So
Yep. Sometimes that's all you got to do is just get the deal done.
Right.
Yeah.
So Ryan, you've been around for at least since 2016. I think you were doing deals before then, right? But 2016 was when you started doing them on your own. So it's been quite some time now. You're somebody in my mind that's got some of the strongest opinions about things. So I wanted to ask you about those. And one of those is that when you help people, you say you don't want to give them the dream. You want to only work with people that already have the dream. Why have you chosen to go that route when there's so many people that are also painting the dream out there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. That's a great question. So I'm happy to inspire people that don't have it, right? Like for me, cars are what got me into the business. So if people see my stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, your McLaren's sweet. Like, how do you afford that? I would rather be able to give them free resources that I wish I had than to monetize that. I think it comes down to like not wanting to charge people when they probably really can't afford it. Mm-hmm. I'm also very much against the like no credit, no time, no skill, no effort, just like make money, right? Like I see ads from other coaches that I won't name. And kind of my stance was just like, I want to work with people that already know the basics so that I'm not the one selling them on, you could have this incredible life, just pay me. It's, hey, you've already seen the benefits. You've already seen some cash here. What you're lacking is the consistency that I can help you find. Mm-hmm. So man, I don't really fault the people that do it. I think it's kind of like a personal thing. I've tried to focus on being an operator, not a coach. Right. Mm-hmm. So we're still flipping. We're still wholesaling. We just bought like a 9-unit complex with somebody that's in CCF. And even like the people I work with, I don't view them as like students. Like it's not this, I'm up here and down here. Like we view it as a mastermind group. I'm in there like, hey guys, should I do this deal? Like It's kind of just our place. Yep. But I don't know, man. I was talking to somebody the other day and I was like, I haven't made $1 through that I feel bad about.
Good.
There you go.
And I want to continue to be able to say that. I actually had a whole funnel built out by a group that like scales guys in the space, right? Started running it and it was selling something. I ran it for like a couple days. It was like a get started for newbies thing. I mean, they're selling it for like $37. And I was like, guys, I'm just going to throw it all on YouTube for free. Like I just, that feels better to me. And I think that's because I plan on being in the space long-term. So
Got it. Love that you're focused on being an operator rather than a coach, because if I'm going to hire a coach to do something, I'd like them to have achieved what I'm actually trying to achieve. It makes me listen to them a lot more. Yep. So that brings me to your second strong opinion that I've noticed is in a world where there are obviously a lot of people making money from yellow letters that look like ransom notes written with a marker, you've chosen that your marketing is going to look way, way different, right? You put together these like really beautiful invitation envelopes. You've got these really cool like summertime or Americana themed mail pieces. Can you talk to me about why you've chosen to go that direction rather than some of the cheaper options that are out there that people do still make money from?
Yeah, no, totally. So one, I think it comes down to just not wanting to do it the same way everybody else does it. Right. So it was A, wanting to stand out. B, it was how can we generate the highest response rate possible for the best ROI, and sending stuff that somebody gets and they're like, I've never gotten anything like this, has done that for me. I've historically described it like an apple tree, for anybody that's, got a white wife in the Midwest that takes you out to do that during fall, right? Like the cheapest, just worst mail is going to get you all that stuff at the bottom that everybody else can get. What I've done really well with is the stuff at the top. So I'll have people say things like, I've gotten 10 other letters. You're the only person I called. And we also do Facebook ads, pay per click, and SEO. So I don't really do cold calling or SMS. That's kind of been like our line in the sand. We want to do ethical, legal, and scalable.
Got it. Is cold calling and SMS illegal, or is it unethical in your opinion?
I'm not an attorney, and you have people that will die on this hill. There's a way to do it correctly, and there's a way to not do it correctly. You have a lot of people that have not been doing it correctly for a long time. And like, I mean, I'm an open book. I was doing SMS marketing back in 2018, like before it was cool, right? Same thing with like RVMs, all that stuff. And a buddy of mine helped me set it up, and I just followed his advice. And it's like, why am I using a fake name tied to a fake company to try to get lead? Like, if this isn't sketchy, why are all of these things? And I've heard people like, oh, you pay your VA in the Philippines to set up the dialer the way it doesn't tie back to you. And I'm like, why we got to jump through all these hoops if this ain't sketch, right?
Yeah.
So do not call list does exist. There's people that will tell you, well, you're not selling anything, you're offering a service. Like, there's all those arguments to be made, right?
Right.
For me, what I found is A, it did feel sketchy, just my own personal opinion. And B, the leads required a lot more chasing. It was a lot more like follow up, trying to get somebody to the table. So we just haven't done it for years now.
Got it. I think that's one thing that's really, I want to double tap into is like, what is an ethical way to do this business? It reminds me of a social media post that you just posted where one of your buyers then remarketed your own deal. And I think you kept their earnest money deposit, right? So obviously like wholesaling is actually finding a discounted deal and then turning around and receiving an assignment fee for passing it off to another investor. So can you explain, a lot of our listeners are brand new, why was it wrong for this person to take your deal that you found and then remarket it again to their own list of buyers?
Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with that if it's disclosed up front, right? This particular deal, it was a flip I'd completed, listed it on the MLS at retail, got a retail offer for it. And it was like $250,000 house, right? $250K. And I get an email with it at like $270.
It's your own deal. You've listed it for sale.
Yeah. So she approached us as a cash buyer with proof of funds, no and/or assigns, right? Like we did our due diligence before we accepted the offer. Okay. I think she pitched it as like, oh, she was going to use it as an Airbnb, right? If you have to lie to get the deal done, there's probably some issues. Like even wholesaling, don't get me wrong, it's how I got my start. I would way rather somebody learn how to reverse wholesale, which is that course I mentioned that I threw out on YouTube, because like you don't have to pretend you're a cash buyer with like, oh, my partner doesn't approve, and you don't have a partner. You don't have to pretend you're able to buy it when you can't, right? So, I think a lot of this for me is I've done things and then reflected on like, why did that not feel good, right? So with her, it was what didn't feel good. She lied through her freaking teeth, right? I've had deals before that I couldn't move, and friends have been like, hey, I think I've got a guy for this. You want to split it with me? Sure. Bring me an offer. Right. So I think that disclosure piece is important. And then I'm also a big fan of like adding value in some way. Right. So yeah.
Got it. So in her case, she told you she was going to use it as an Airbnb. She did get it under contract with you, it sounds like. But I'm guessing that contract did not have an assignment clause. Was that the issue?
Nope. Yeah. So she was going to double close it was what she was going to do. So it didn't have any and/or assigns, no partner, like, right. We cut all that crap out. Like if if you want the deal, this is what it is. And then, you know, she was like, oh, it didn't inspect well. And I'm like, send me the report.
Gotcha.
She didn't have it inspected. She didn't have the money to do that. So, it's kind of like wholesaling listed stuff, right? Like, I don't even love that. Now, like what I tell sellers, if I get a call from somebody that's listed, hey, are you still under contract with your agent? Okay, if you are, I have to talk to them. If not, I can make you an offer, but it's going to be dramatically below what you were listed at. Because if I was going to pay what you were listed at, I would have, right? So we've done some that like it was listed for say 200. We get it under contract for like 120. They take it off the MLS and we shoot it out at 140, right? That to me feels fine. But it's somebody lists it for 200. We offer them 200 and we hope we can find somebody to pay us 203 is like, you're just wasting everybody's time.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that for sure. So if you guys are brand new into wholesaling, I think you should check out Ryan Dossey's YouTube channel, which is just Ryan Dossey, right? On YouTube.
Yep.
And he's also on Instagram. Is there one other resource that I personally am taking advantage of is you also realize that people get busy and they don't receive calls from their marketing. So the marketing might be really, really effective, but if you're not answering the call, especially like answering it live, a lot of times that person will go call somebody else. So then it's hard to get the ROI from the marketing you're doing. And so I think you guys will answer somebody's phone for like what, $50? Is that it?
Yeah. So the thought process behind that goes back to like the user experience, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever called a business and they don't answer, but it sucks, right? Or you call a business, you get rounded to like their 800 number. Me, like I was in a new market. I needed to hire an attorney. Guess what? I started calling down the list. Guess who got my money? The one that answered and had good reviews, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of ties in like the review piece, right? Our brand it's not Ryan buys houses with no website. It's, you can go find it on Google. We're BBB accredited. Here you go. Right. But it is that answering live. If somebody say gets 5 pieces of mail, they're going through and calling. If I'm the only one that picks up, I've got a dramatically better shot of getting that deal than anybody else does.
Yep.
Totally. I operate the same way. No matter what, if I'm calling a bunch of service providers, I'm going to go with the person who actually answers the phone first. So definitely take it. And $50, right? For somebody who's starting out and they can get their calls answered is a huge win. And personally, I get so many spam calls. I'm not sure if it's because I'm me and my phone number is just out there on the internet or what, but I get so many spam calls. I wouldn't want my marketing calls to also be coming through my phone because I'm not going to answer those spam calls. So that's a huge advantage to having the calls answered by Call Porter, which I really appreciate. Thanks for making that business.
Yeah. Thanks for using it, man.
So you guys check out Ryan's YouTube channel. Ryan, do you have any final advice for somebody who's just trying to get started?
Just getting started. Yeah, I have a couple. First, I would say, like, if you're interested in hiring anybody, you're interested in using DealMachine, right? Go try their free stuff first. Like, test the concepts. You know, in my experience, like, if the free stuff isn't good, what you're going to pay for probably isn't going to be either, right? So that'd be the first thing. Like, test the free stuff. I tell people all the time, like, if my free stuff doesn't help you, please don't try to give me your money. Because you're not going to like a higher level quality, more help of what you already didn't like. You know, it's like if I don't like sushi, I'm not going to go to a fancier sushi restaurant. I'm going to go to a different kind of restaurant. Right.
Yeah.
Second thing I'd throw out there is like, try to kind of have like some intentional blinders on yourself. I love my dad, right? Interested in getting started in real estate, works with me now. I hate when he's like, I'm watching stuff from this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. I'm like, you kind of need to just pick a lane and start driving, right? So whether that's wholesaling, whether that's flipping, whether that's land, whether that's creative finance, whether it's like whatever it is, if you try to go in 5 directions, you're probably not going to get very far versus going just in one direction consistently. And then probably the last thing I'd throw out is just revenue generating activities, right? what took me from 6 deals to 74 in a year was consistent marketing. I marketed even if I didn't feel like it, and revenue generating activities. So my coach back then, Chuck, our weekly call was, what did you do to earn your paycheck? We all know real estate runs 60 to 90 day cycle, right? What I do today is going to determine what I get a month or two from now. So that was the constant thing. And back then I did a lot of like, well, I'm on Bigger Pockets. I'm listening to this podcast. I stretched, I worked out. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I played with my Carrot site. None of that's going to get me paid. So it was marketing, making the offers, doing the follow-up. You know, even like guys in CCF, when they start to get some traction, we'll see them do like they hit Facebook, they hit Instagram, they hit Resimply, they hit Facebook, and it's like, you're just like, you're spinning, but you're not gaining traction. So figure out what those things are that actually get you paid, like downloading DealMachine, driving for dollars, not just tagging the properties, but marketing to them, marketing to them consistently. Like, I think the most helpful quote that I've ever heard was, it's going to take more time and more effort than you thought it would when you started.
Yep. True.
Yeah, that's so true. It's going to take more time and more effort than you thought when you started, but you'll never know unless you actually get started. And having those blinders will help you achieve results faster, because you're going to be going in one direction instead of 6. I think that's great advice, Ryan. And thank you so much for putting so much quality free content out there. Again, check it out on Ryan Dossey's YouTube channel. And we really appreciate you being here, Ryan.
Yeah, it was nice meeting the other Ryan and hanging out with Mr. Lecco.
That's right.
Now we know who each other are.
Well, I'm sure we'll love to have you back. I feel like there were so many things I didn't even get to ask that I was planning on it, but I loved where the conversation went. And so hopefully in the future, we'll see you again.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.